Welcome into this week's The Women's Basketball Podcast, your one-stop shop for all things women's college hoops, WNBA, Unrivaled, and oh so much more. Yes, folks, it may be that weird limbo of sorts between women's college basketball season and the WNBA preseason beginning the first weekend of May, but we are back with a new installment. Mia O'Brien, Mitchell Northam, and Mitch. It's award season. We may not necessarily be voting on player or coach of the year from the college hoops season here today, but we've got some superlatives. I just hosted the UNF Athletics Banquet, affectionately known as the Aussies, earlier this week. I'm ready to once again don a nice, well, maybe not ball gown this go around, but I was in one earlier this week. I don't know if you have a suit and tie ready, but I think it's time to hand out some awards and have a little bit of fun. What say you?
I just have to make sure we read the ballots right and not have a, Moonlight
La
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 La Land moment.
Land.
Yeah, we don't want that.
Never forget, as I was reading through the nominees at the Aussies earlier this week, I was like, what if I just say the wrong one here? Would anyone notice? I'm just kidding. Let's begin as we do each and every week, though, here on the Women's Basketball Podcast with our Her of the Week. And this week's Her of the Week crosses the divide, we'll call it, not just between college hoops and professional hoops, but the men's game and the women's game. And that Her of the Week is Stephanie White, the first-year head coach of the Indiana Fever. You know her, you love her, Purdue star, come back home to the great Hoosier State. And in addition to coaching Caitlin Clark this upcoming season, she also is serving as a color commentator, not just for ESPN, Mitch, but the fact that she got to call the Pacers playoff game. And certainly Caitlin Clark in the suite, in the stands, her Fever players in attendance, her children were there. People kept texting me. They kept asking, who is this cute child that Caitlin Clark pulled from the stands? It's not just any cute child. It's Stephanie White's child. It's Lisa Salters' child. Good vibes all around. The Pacers get the win. People are debating if Tyrese Halliburton is overrated or not. That we don't care about. This is a Stephanie White podcast. We're proud of Steph for reinserting herself right back into her home state.
Yeah, I get to see Stephanie White a lot actually during the college season because she does a lot of ACC games. So yeah, cool to see her. Yeah, do some NBA coverage. I did see the clip of her kid sitting on Caitlin Clark's lap. That was very cute. I also in the world of WNBA coaches moonlighting as NBA take havers this week. I saw that Becky Hammon had some spicy things to say about Jalen Brunson. Basically that you can't win a championship if your best player is small, which
it's funny because how tall is Becky?
I don't think Becky's very big.
That's what I thought.
I don't know did she win a championship as a player?
That's a good question. That's a good trivia question.
I don't know if that's but I mean as a coach, that philosophy is checked out for her considering that her best player has been Asia Wilson. Yeah, basically, it was the Knicks can't win because their best player is Jalen Brunson and he's too small. And she'd routed off, John Stockton, Allen Iverson, Steve Nash, all these guards who never won a title. And she was like, you can't count Steph because he's in a different class. And so, good week for the WNBA coaches just inserting themselves into the conversation as the NBA playoffs ramp up.
And I also saw a ton of NBA fans be like, my goodness, we can't even get through a broadcast of our own without not just them bringing up the WNBA, which too bad. Welcome to the world we live in now. We care about the WNBA in the mainstream culture, but also the fact that they bring up Caitlin Clark any chance they get on ESPN. Always be marketing, in the words of CC.
Yeah, to the NBA fans, I would say at the world's smallest violin, this, we had this a couple years ago where every time you turn on a women's basketball game, they talked about Kobe Bryant and how much he loved women's basketball. And that's great. And shout out to Kobe, RIP, one of the greats. But it was literally every single time you turned on a college or WNBA game, particularly if Sabrina Ionescu was playing, we had to talk about Kobe Bryant. And so, welcome to our world, NBA fans.
Taste of your own medicine. You see a basketball, you talk about Caitlin Clark. It's the way the world goes.
That's
she may make an appearance somehow, some way. Did not play college basketball this year. She may make an appearance in are we calling them the Wubby Awards, the Wibbable Papa? I was workshopping this morning, folks. What's our acronym for this? Or are we calling them superlatives? What do you want to call our postseason college hoops awards here on the Women's Basketball Podcast, Mitch?
I think the Wubbies is a good
The
stand-in
Wubbies.
for now. We can't call them the potties. That sounds bad. So I
Mhm.
think the Wubbies is what we have to settle with for now.
Okay, the Wubbies it is. But before we get to the Wubbies, we have to hit this week's starting five, our five biggest storylines from the sport. Most of these surrounding, of course, everyone's favorite subject in college athletics, the transfer portal. Let's begin with Janiah Barker. Killa Kim has done it again. Mitch, the floor is yours. I will just tell you this. I was very proud as a women's basketball fan and a co host of the Women's Basketball Podcast that as I'm preparing for the Aussies at the University of North Florida earlier this week, and we're all just making small talk backstage, one of the videographers for the University of North Florida, who I did not know his game, goes, "Man, Janiah Barker to Tennessee? Like, that ain't fair for us. What is happening in women's college hoops?" I say, we're building super teams, we're building stars.
Yeah, Janiah Barker is a big pickup for Kim Caldwell and the Tennessee Lady Vols. I had her. I've been like trying to rank. This is completely subjective and completely my opinion, and they're probably all wrong. But I've been trying to rank the best players in the transfer portal over at SB Nation, and I had Janiah Barker in the top 30, right at 27. I mean, Janiah Barker is somebody who came into college with a ton of hype. She was the third ranked recruit in the 2022 class, but hasn't quite lived up to that hype. Haven't quite seen the potential that was promised there. She will now be playing for her third program in 4 seasons. She started at Texas A&M, where she was good as a freshman, good as a sophomore, goes to the NCAA tournament. And then this past year as a junior, she's at UCLA, where she's mostly, kind of a spark plug off the bench kind of role. It helps them go to the Final Four, averaging 7.4 and 6.1 rebounds per game. I thought that was a solid fit for her. But again, we haven't seen the full potential of Janiah Barker. I think at Tennessee, we're gonna find out real quick, like what we actually have on our hands here with her. I mean, she's somebody that I think a lot of college coaches and WNBA coaches too now, as we look ahead to the 2026 draft, are kind of salivating over a little bit just because of like her makeup and her size and her combination of the length and ability and everything that she can do on the floor. She's kind of like your prototypical, wing that can do a little bit of everything. We're going to find out real quick in Kim Caldwell's system if she can shoot the 3-pointer or not. I know that for sure. And we're going to see her run a lot and hopefully make some big time plays. So it's a nice addition for Tennessee, I think, who has made some other moves in the portal as well, but none as big as this one.
Becky Hammond would tell you that Janiah Barker could win a WNBA championship. Not
Could.
a small player. Not a small player. I refrain from making the Trent Baalke arm length joke as well. But yes, another big pickup for Kim Caldwell in Tennessee, who we will also circle back to later in this program because I'm fascinated, Mitch, the rotations, the idea of a productive proof of concept in terms of the hockey shifts at the SEC level. How do you think Janiah Barker will fit? And in terms of the elephant in the room, MiLasyaFulwiley, and the shifts and the substitutions, or perhaps curious substitution techniques of one Dawn Staley in South Carolina, where MiLasyaFulwiley really wasn't able to put her full skill set on display. And certainly Janiah Barker coming off the bench for Corey Close in Westwood this year, again, not able to put it all on display. Is she going to have that opportunity in a system that values the idea of staying fresh and consistently rotating new players in?
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, Janiah Barker this past season played just 17 and a half minutes per game. So yeah, you would think that going to Tennessee, she's certainly going to play more than that. But also, like I look at Tennessee's roster from this past year, and their leader in minutes played was Samara Spencer, who played 25.1 minutes per game.
Right.
So they don't really have anybody who's clocking, 30, 32, 35 minutes per game. But if Janiah Barker can get up to 25, make herself a starter, make herself an integral part of that lineup next to, the likes of like Talasia Cooper and Ruby Whitehorn. I think that would be a good thing. Certainly, Tennessee and Kim Caldwell are counting on this working out in Knoxville for Janiah Barker.
In case you missed it on last week's pod, we did our way too early Final Four predictions. I had Tennessee in the 2026 Final Four, and I also had this next team We are Maryland stans. Mitch is from the great state of Maryland, and Brenda Freese is at it again in the transfer portal. Tell us more, Mitch.
Yeah, so last Friday, Brenda Freese gets a commitment from Aluchi Okinawa, who played at Duke. She was the ACC Sixth Player of the Year as a freshman. This past season, I mean, a big reason why the Blue Devils won the ACC title and advanced the Elite Eight for the first time since 2013. She was the MVP of the ACC tournament. She averaged 10.1 points per game, 5.3 rebounds, a couple steals, a couple assists. She did a little bit of everything at Duke. She was like their Swiss Army knife off the bench, spark plug. Duke had a big luxury this season when they were able to bring her and Toby Fournier off the bench at the same time. I was a bit surprised that she even went into the transfer portal because she seemed like a player who was all in on Duke. I was even told that she didn't really want to leave Duke, but there were, some people in her camp maybe who wanted her to go pursue maybe some greener pastures, and so she finds herself
green as in moolah as well.
I'm not sure. Perhaps. Hard to say. But she goes into the portal. She's highly sought after. I think somebody, it might have been Talia Goodman who put out a list of like all the teams that she, had received interest from. At the winner who comes out on top at the end of last week is the Maryland Terrapins and Brenda Freese, who now get a player who is really going to be a jolt to their offense and their defense. I don't even know, based on everybody that Maryland has coming back next year, if Aluchi is even a starter at Maryland. She might be. She could be. Maryland is a team that's going to have a lot of depth next season. They have Aluchi coming in now. They have Brianna McDaniel coming back, who's, hopefully going to be healthy. They have Sailor Poffenbarger. They have coming in addition to Aluchi, Yarden Garzon, who's one of the best shooters in the portal. They have Gracie Merkel coming in from Penn State, who's a double-double machine, shot a Big Ten best, 67% from the floor. They got Mira McLean coming back. They got Kayleen Smichael coming back. Like, this is a stacked team. So, I think if you're somebody who's, looking for value, you're out there on the sports books and, looking ahead to, looking for, a good value in a potential future Final Four pick, Maryland is it. Based on everything that UCLA has lost in the portal, based on USC probably not having Juju Watkins next season, I mean, Maryland's got as good a chance as any other team to win the Big Ten. Just on paper, the talent that they have, even with losing Ali Cubic to the portal, this is a stacked team. And Brenda Freese, while a lot of other coaches of her generation have complained about the portal or decided that they'd rather retire instead of deal with all this stuff, she's adapted and she keeps doing this. I think last year she brought in 7 transfers. This year, I think they're up to 3. She's got a stacked roster, and Maryland's going to be very good.
Were we early, or are we just like the truth teller, the prophecy foretold out here that we a week ago, Mitch, discussed Maryland's odds, and now here they are. You're telling people if you're going to make some money with Mitch, maybe the Terps are a nice little pick.
Yeah, I think we were early and we were right because we believe in Brenda Freese.
So. We do. We wanted Brenda Freese to coach the men and the women's team. We love Buzz Williams. We're excited for Buzz Williams. We understand that Brenda Freese has not won a national title since 2006, but she's been awfully darn close, Mitch. And I agree. I think with the landscape of the Big Ten as it currently stands heading into the 2025-2026 season, Maryland as primed as anyone. This is the same coach who had 11 transfers last year and was able to make a run to the second weekend of the NCAA tournament. Let's keep it.
If the bracket breaks the right way, bracket luck is a real thing. I think we could certainly see Maryland in the Final Four again. I mean, just as last year, we saw them push South Carolina to the brink in the Sweet 16. They lost by just 4 points. Just couldn't make some shots down the end there and couldn't stop MiLasyaFulwiley, who I'm sure we'll discuss later. I believe in Brenda Freese. Maryland's going to be good next year. They're going to be a contender. If you're looking for some value, you could spend your money in worse ways.
Somewhere our friend Sarah Ashley Barker is still crying about her 40 piece that was for naught because of Brenda Freese. Let's pivot to the WNBA briefly here, Mitch. Some news out of Seattle, which is, as we discussed last week, one of the most fascinating rosters heading into the 2025 season. And now the news that Jordan Horston and Nika Mule both out for the year for the Storm. On this podcast, though, we've got a sneaky, I don't even want to say sneaky anymore, but a dark horse candidate who we think could be an impact player for the Storm, or at the very least make the roster as a rookie. And that is our friend. Yes, our friend. Take that, you folks out there in the Little Apple in Manhattan, Kansas. Our friend, Serena Sundell of Kansas State, who was drafted in the 3rd round by the Storm.
Yeah, I said it, I think, when we did our post-draft pod, that I thought Serena Sundell could be a steal of the draft. I thought that she should have certainly been a finalist for the Nancy Lieberman Award, even though she wasn't, which is given to the best point guard in women's college basketball every year. She should have been a top 5 finalist for that. When Naoka Lee was out, she carried Kansas State. So yeah, I think this is a bummer for the Storm in that we're not going to see Nika Mule and we're not going to see Jordan Horston this year. But if you're Serena Sundell, I mean, here's your opportunity to make this roster as a 3rd round pick, which we know is not an easy thing to do in the WNBA. And it's your chance to also make an impact. Like, can Serena Sundell be like the first backup to Skylar Diggins-Smith there? I think that's a real possibility. I think that Serena Sundell can be a successful WNBA player. I mean, she's got the size. She's 6'2". She's a good enough size to be a point guard in that league. And we know that she has great court vision. I mean, she led college basketball in assists this past year. So this is a good thing for Serena Sundell if you're looking for a silver lining in these injuries. Again, a bummer that we're not going to see Nika Mule and Jordan Horston. But if you're a Kansas State fan or a Seattle Storm fan or a Serena Sundell fan, this is good.
How often are we going to hear about her brother playing for the Seattle Seahawks in the same city?
I don't even know who her brother is.
He was
Is he good?
He went to South Dakota State.
Okay.
Was a football player.
Shout out Jack Rabbits.
Yeah, Jack Rabbits. Shout out Jack Rabbits. We love the Jack Rabbits on this podcast. Both the football variety and the women's basketball variety. Was undrafted, even though he was projected to be a day 3 pick a season ago, and made the Seahawks as an undrafted free agent offensive lineman last year.
Jalen Sundell.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
The only reason that Kevin, my boyfriend, knows everything about Serena Sundell is because he was all in on Jalen and the Jaguars trying to draft him on day 3 last year, which obviously was for naught. And yes, I think we will hear about her brother playing in the same city, playing a professional sport in the same city. If she makes the team, at least once a broadcast. I'm putting the over-under at 1.5 right now, Mitch.
He is a center. He's 6'5". Cool. Yeah, shout out to him.
Yeah, shout out to their parents too, because the measurables are off the charts. Becky Hammond says that they both can win championships too. Let's check in with our friends in the triangle, Mitch, as we span the wide world of the transfer portal. Tell me more about Wes Moore, your big winner on WNBA draft night, but has he been winning in the portal?
No, he has not been winning in the portal. It's been not a great portal season so far for NC State. I don't think they've added any players yet. They really wanted a player from St. Peter's. Her name is Fatmata Jana. And she, I think, is one of the more sought after forwards in the transfer portal this season. Played at St. Peter's. She's about 6'3", but she averaged 18.2 points and 11.6 rebounds per game. Led the nation in defensive rebounds at 9.7. So she goes in the portal. She's pretty sought after by a lot of Power 4 programs. NC State was in her top 3, so to speak. I've been told that she is going to go to Texas A&M. And
who also may or may not make an appearance later in the podcast. Interesting.
Yes, which is a big time pickup for Joni Taylor and a needed pickup for her. So she's going to go there. The other player that NC State wanted who could play that, Power 4 kind of spot was Kara Dunn, who transferred out of Georgia Tech. Really good player these past 3 years for Nell Fortner. After Nell retires, she jumps into the portal. NC State really, really wanted her. She ends up going to USC. So NC State has kind of swung and missed now on two players that they sort of really needed, because I don't think they have a good replacement at this point in time for Madison Hayes, like kind of that versatile, player who can kind of play the 3-4. That's what Kara Dunn would have been. I mean, almost a carbon copy of Madison Hayes, where Jana would have been more of a traditional 4. They're going to be in the mix for some other players. I think they're going to go after Ali Kubik, who I mentioned earlier is in the portal out of Maryland, who played really, really well for the Terps in the NCAA tournament. Hit a couple of 3-pointers, scored, got some rebounds. A versatile player who can step out and shoot it. The other player that I think they're in the mix for is Kylie Kitts, who is the younger sister of Chloe Kitts, who is basically a true freshman. She left high school a year early to go to Florida this past season, but she redshirted at Florida and didn't play. So she's got that experience of like being in a college environment for a year, but hasn't played any basketball yet. And she's in the portal. I think she's someone who could help NC State out. If not, and they're going to be leaning pretty heavily on, I think, on Maddie Cox, who will be a junior next year and has kind of come off the bench and done some good things. So we'll see. But yeah, so far, not a great portal run for Westmore and the Wolfpack.
Realistically, losing 2 first-round picks, 2 pillars of that program, and Isaiah James and Sanaya Rivers. I mean, was this always going to be a matter of, well, if you can hit in the portal, i.e., and yes, I'll make the connection, Lucy Olson in Iowa, maybe you go right back to, at the very least, competing consistently to get to the second weekend? Is it that scenario, or was this always going to be, hey, this is the year maybe the Wolfpack take a step back?
I think they probably will take a little bit of a step back, but I think they thought that, they see Zoe Brooks, stepping up into the point guard spot. They see Zam Jones stepping up and being her backcourt mate. They see Tilda Trigger being the center. So it was really like, okay, we got 3 spots covered. We really got to figure out the 3 and the 4 and what we're doing there. And I thought that they thought that they could sort of plug and play those holes via the portal, and it just hasn't worked out for them yet. I think if they got Kara Dunn and Jana, that would have been the perfect world sort of scenario, and they would have been very happy about that. Now, missing on both of them, they're kind of playing some pickup here and trying to make up, for lost time. There's still some solid players out there left in the portal. There's not a ton of, versatile size, I think, that they were looking for within those 2 players who are like ACC ready right now. I think Ali Kubik can be one of those players. She can be your 4. You still got to figure out a 3. Maybe you find a shooter somewhere. So we'll see what happens with Westmore and the Wolfpack. I have a feeling that they have some tricks up their sleeve and they'll end up getting some commitments down the road. But it hasn't been great for them so far.
Let's wrap up this week's starting 5. Back in the WNBA, friend of the program, Brenna Green of KOIN News, tweeted this one out today as we are taping this on Tuesday, April 22nd. It was a big day for women's sports in Portland, where they are opening a joint NWSL and WNBA practice facility. Mitch, the reason we're going to wrap this week's starting 5 with this news note is because, and who would have thought I'd come out of the Aussies with not only inspiration for today's episode, but also so many news nuggets around the women's basketball world. Some early returns from our friend, former Florida Gulf Coast head coach Carl Semesco up in Atlanta. Some surprise about the practice facility situation up there with the Atlanta Dream. Mitch, you previously covered the Dream, and I know it was a couple years ago, but you tell me, is it a world in which there is, whether it's combined with the NWSL local team or a standalone practice facility, does that exist? Or maybe that beautiful shiny one they're getting in Indianapolis next year, does that exist in Atlanta? Because I was told it firmly does not yesterday.
No, I mean, when I covered the Atlanta Dream, they played at Georgia Tech and they practiced at Georgia State. There was no Atlanta Dream arena. There was no Atlanta Dream practice facility. I talked to Nikki Collin many a times in Georgia State's like auxiliary gym that they had there, which was in effect the Atlanta Dream practice facility. Spent a whole lot of time in McCamish Pavilion where Georgia Tech played. So no, there was not, when I was there, an Atlanta Dream practice facility. I don't know if there is one now.
There's not.
I would suspect,
spoiler alert, there's not.
I would suspect that this, a joint, kind of all women's pro sports space is the first of its kind.
It is the first of its kind. Shout out to our friends in Portland. Shout out to Brenna for shining a light on this wonderful, groundbreaking moment for women's sports. But yeah, apparently, let's just put it this way: the new staff of the Atlanta Dream is having to ask for more gym time, more space because they don't have a standalone practice facility that they can use whenever they want. And that's where I am so fascinated, Mitch, and that's why I want to wrap with this. I am so fascinated between Carl Semesco with the Atlanta Dream, Lynn Roberts with the Los Angeles Sparks, two massive top 10 media markets in the country. It's not like Indianapolis where you're one of three acts in town and they love their basketball. I am very curious for all of these college coaches who are jumping to the professional ranks. Is the grass actually greener? Not with the money point, but actually greener in terms of opportunity once you get to the W in terms of the resources comparatively to college.
Yeah, they're going to find out real quick because I imagine Carl Smesco. I mean, the reason that he stayed at Florida Gulf Coast for so long was because he was like the kingmaker there. Like he literally built that program from the parking lot up, and got, from my understanding, pretty much whatever he wanted. And he was one of the highest paid mid-major coaches in the sport and all that fun stuff. It's funny, I actually saw him at the college all-star game in Tampa at the Final Four, chatting with Nikki Collin, the former head coach of the Dream. So I wonder if they were kind of trading some notes on what Atlanta is like. Yeah, they're going to find out real quick. Yeah, the money might be good in the WNBA, but he's certainly not going to have the power that he had at Florida Gulf Coast, and probably not the access to resources that he had there either. I don't know where the Dream actually practice at. I'm not plugged in there really anymore. So yeah, but I don't think they have a practice facility.
They don't.
And so that's unfortunate for them. I wonder where they practice. I wonder if it's still at Georgia State or if they practice at that small arena that they play at in College Park. I'll have to check with some of my Atlanta people and see what's going on down there.
I do want to note that the preseason hasn't begun yet. So I don't know if this is like unofficial practices. So I don't know if because of that, that's why this is happening. But the person I spoke with yesterday referred to it as basically a YMCA that they were.
That's not what you want. That's not what you want.
And I don't want to speak out of turn, Atlanta Dream fans. I don't want to say I'm not getting my facts straight, but I do feel confident in telling you that the fact that the head coach had to request more gym time, that in and of itself should not be the standard of what's accepted in women's basketball at the professional level. And so I just had to make sure we noted that, especially when you look at what's happening across the country up in the Pacific Northwest.
Okay, I found a press release. This is from
go.
last March. Core 4 Athletic Complex confirms multi-year partnership as Atlanta Dream's official practice facility. And this will be their practice facility per this release on the Atlanta Dreams website for the 2024 and 2025 seasons. The Core 4 Athletic Complex, founded by former NBA player, All-Star Paul Millsap.
Shout out to the
That's all it
Hawks.
says. So this looks like a gym of some sort. At Core 4 Athletic Complex, we're dedicated to providing exceptional service and creating a welcoming environment. There's a picture of a kid dunking, train with the best. Yeah, this looks like a big kind of catch-all, do whatever you want here kind of gym. So I guess the Dream are just sort of renting practice time from here is what I'm catching on to.
I will leave you all with this. Imagine what Mitch just described and realize that Brittany Griner, one of the greatest women's basketball players of the last 20 years, is signing up to go through this, to have to go through this system. And I think, look, it's part of being in the league. And these women have dealt with, not having as many resources as their male counterparts. It's well documented. But the fact that it's 2025, and look, I understand you can't build a women's basketball only practice facility in a year in spite of the massive spike in popularity, and certainly with the CBA deal forthcoming. I understand it can't be built overnight, but the fact that we are still here 25 plus years into the league's existence and the Atlanta Dream have been around for a minute, it's very surprising to me, Mitch, that this still exists.
They have, per this website now that I'm perusing and did not plan on being on today, they have a weight room, which is good. A gym should have that. They have basketball courts, also good. A gym should have that as well. They have a sauna. They have hot and cold tubs. Which is funny, which just reminded me when I covered the Dream back in 2018. I once talked to Elizabeth Williams after a game while she was in the cold tub at Georgia Tech. So that was fun, fun memory there. So yeah, Atlanta Dream. Hope y'all can fix this.
Shout out Paul Millsap, though. Thank you for
Yeah,
building
sure.
the core four. We appreciate you and your efforts. All right, Mitch, it is time. Time to put on your suit and tie. I don't have anything fancy around here. We'll just do a lot of drum rolling because it is time for the first ever Wubby Awards on the Women's Basketball Podcast. Let's begin with the first award of the evening, the Portal Get of the Year, aka the transfers that worked out best. Mitch, your winner of the Portal of the Year get is.
Oh, it's Haley Van Lith, of course.
But you originally had a different player, so maybe we should like note her name.
I did, because I thought that you were going to go in this direction, so I was going to let you have this one with Haley Van Lith. But yeah, sure. An honorable mention here would be Georgia Amore of Kentucky, who was the centerpiece really for, I think, probably the biggest 1 year turnaround in the Power Four this season. You know, Kentucky was awful last season in their final campaign under Kyra Elzy. Just a really just non-competitive SEC team. They hire Kenny Brooks. Kenny Brooks brings Georgia Amore and a couple other transfers along with him, including Clara Strack and Tiani He. And they end up being the fourth best team in the SEC. They host first-round NCAA tournament games, really one of Kentucky's best seasons in the Wild, and they sort of restore that program to prominence. But I think, it's hard to argue with Haley Van Lith here, just because of where she was. You think about like this time a year ago, coming off of that loss to Iowa in the Elite Eight, where we saw her shrug when she was trying to defend Caitlin Clark, and how the LSU coaches just absolutely would not bail her out, and how it was just such a bad fit, and like it just didn't work at LSU. And she transferred to TCU and has arguably her best college season ever. Shoots a career high 45.2% from the floor, 17 points, 4 rebounds, 5 assists per game, career high in assists too, by the way. Takes TCU with her as the bus driver, with her leading the way. I know Sidonia Prince was also on this team, and so was Madison Connor, but Haley Van Lith was the star, and she was the leader, and they win as she went. They win the Big 12 for the first time ever. They make the Elite Eight for the first time ever. She's the Big 12 Player of the Year. This one worked out. This one was great. And I think the TCU fans are now hoping that Olivia Miles will follow in her footsteps and have another great year for Mark Campbell. And Haley Van Lith, after the great year that she had, ended up being a first-round pick. So yeah, I think unquestionably she's the transfer of the year. But I like your pick too.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you looking out for me with Haley Van Lith. I was actually debating her. First off, I was debating if we should have a Bus Driver of the Year award, because if we
Oh,
did, I think she's certainly a nominee for that as well.
next year.
I was debating putting her as my nominee for Moment of the Year, Best Mess. There were a lot of other categories that I was debating putting her, but I appreciate you looking out. I think we're in a consensus that Haley Van Lith is going to win this award here at the Wubbies. But my nominee, yes, I really put Reagan Beers of Oklahoma down, not just because she led Oklahoma in scoring, not just because she led them in rebounds, she led them in blocks, 17.3 points per game, 9.4 boards per game, 1.2 blocks per game, but because Reagan Beers and the crew in Norman have created something that also netted the number one recruit in the country in Aaliyah Chavez. And for me, the fact that Jenny Baranczyk was able to leave her home state and create a monster in the Big 12 outside of, again, Ames, Iowa. When you think Big 12 in the state of Iowa, you think Iowa State. And the fact that she's been able to do what she's done in Norman, I think Reagan Beers has played a huge role in that. And in turn, that's why I said, hey, she's got to be the transfer of the year, because not only did she lead them in scoring and boards, but she also in turn has led the way for additional players to come either through traditional recruitment or through the portal as well. But yes, I think as much as Reagan Beers had a great year, Georgia Amore a great year, I think we're in agreement. Producer Dimitri, ring it up. Haley Van Lith, this year's portal get of the year.
Yeah, I think everything you said about Oklahoma and what Reagan Beers kind of represented for them and what she was able to do there is true. She's going to come back next year. Peyton Verhulst comes back next year. They get Aaliyah Chavez. I mean, next year is sort of like in Reagan Beers' final year of eligibility, a bit of kind of like make or break, do it or don't, sort of year for Oklahoma. Went to the Sweet 16 this year. I think that they want to go much further next year. I think Oklahoma would like to get back to the Final Four. The SEC is going to be a really tough league again, but you get Reagan Beers, you get Aaliyah Chavez, you get some of those other supporting pieces back. They might have the makings of something there.
Let's hit this year's moment of the year. This can be a game, a play, or even a tweet. For me, and I referenced it off the top, so let's hit it right away. My nominee that I present for moment of the year this women's college basketball season is that all things are possible through the power of Caitlin Clark, including an Iowa team that we were #not worried about on this podcast back in January. We were not putting Jan Jensen on the hot seat in her first season in Iowa City. They host USC, at the time ranked number 2 in the country. Juju Watkins, of course, would go on to win the National Player of the Year award. And her USC team gets beat by Iowa on Caitlin Clark Day, in which the number 22 was honored and retired. And somehow, some way, the Hawkeyes, a team that so many believed may not even make the NCAA tournament at that point, people in their own state were turning on, were able to turn that around into an impressive run, not only through the home stretch of the regular season, but also in the Big Ten tournament, made the round of 32 once more in the NCAA tournament. And so, ho-hum, Iowa right back to where they were pre-Caitlin Clark. But when she's in the building, literally anything is possible. And for me, it's my moment of the year, Mitch, because watching it just reminded me how magical things tend to be when number 22 just happens to be around.
Yeah, and we saw number 33, Lucy Olson, get drafted by the Washington Mystics. And I think that, that game really propelled Iowa for the rest of the season, got them into the NCAA tournament. And I think, it was a big moment for them. I got to talk to Lucy Olson a little bit at that college All-Star game down in Tampa, and she's just like one of the most
nicest.
Delightful,
Yes.
nicest people I've ever met. Just like was incredibly just like happy to be there. I hope she does well with the Washington Mystics.
Yeah, I actually went down the rabbit hole of her TikTok. She's just so happy and joyful.
Yeah.
I'm very happy for Lucy. I hope she sticks around, a second round pick of the Mystics. Who is your nominee for moment of the year, Mitch?
My moment of the year nominee is this happened at the end of the NC State Notre Dame game in late February. I was sitting courtside for this one, sitting under the basket that this happened at. It's in double OT when Isaiah James comes down the floor and throws the ball behind her back to throw off Olivia Miles, and then lays up a bucket. And the whole place goes wild. I've never heard Reynolds Coliseum louder. NC State goes on to win, and like this is the big play, right? Like this is the one that was on all the shows, was on Twitter and all that stuff. This is going to be the highlight that they play when Isaiah James comes back to NC State one day, and I don't know if she gets her jersey retired or what. Like whenever she's honored there, like this will be the play that they play. Her driving down the court, tossing that ball behind her back in a little Allen Iverson type of moment, and laying that ball up over Olivia Miles. I picked this for a couple of reasons. Number one, it was just a ridiculously awesome play on a really big stage, because this was, kind of the clash of the two titans in the ACC at that moment. College game day was in Raleigh. It was just a really big game. And number three, this game and this play might have broken Notre Dame. I think we're going to get to Notre Dame in a little bit, but like they were never the same after this. Like they had won, I don't know, like 19 games in a row before losing to NC State. And then, they lost another regular season game to Florida State. They went out early in the ACC tournament. And then, of course, we saw them lose in the Sweet 16 to TCU. And then Olivia Miles leaves. And so my theory is that this play and this game broke the Irish, and they were never the same after this.
We'll talk about it in a little bit. Let's just talk about it now, because it's my nominee for the next award, which is Best Mess. By the way, producer Dimitri, we'll just say both of those. It's a tie for moment of the year, because I know for Mitch, it's an emotional. He was there for the Isaiah James moment. I of course, invested in the Caitlin Clark Day affair. So we will just say that one's a tie, and we're going to go right to best mess, because for me, I look, I know the product is also up for this Wubby this year, but rest in peace, Notre Dame women's basketball 2024 to 2025. And I hope it's not the end of the Niele Ivy era. But my goodness, Mitch, like the amount of tea and drama that I had no idea. Well, we kind of were hoping we'd get the tea and drama. We didn't expect you guys, the listeners in the comments on the YouTube version of our explanation of why is Olivia Miles transferring. We didn't expect you guys to come with the receipts and the rumor mill, but my God, like how did this thing devolve so quickly, especially knowing I remember when we recorded our preseason pod, one of our first episodes, we said this is either going to work great or it's going to end in a dumpster fire. And it looked like the best thing since sliced bread for 3.5 months. And then I just don't know what happened the final 3-4 weeks of the season. But all that's left is literally Hannah Hidalgo, the last woman standing in South Bend, Indiana.
Yeah, it was ugly. And like you said, it did look like it was working so well. All the way up until, I mean, even after they lost NC State, I think I came on this podcast and said I still think Notre Dame can win a national championship.
We both did.
So yeah, we both picked Notre Dame to win the national title. And they come back and they look pretty good in the first 2 rounds of the tournament, and then they just did not look good in that game against TCU in the Sweet 16. It just all fell apart really, really quickly. You saw a lot of bad body language. You saw a lot of players who looked like they didn't want to play with each other anymore. And I just thought, I don't know. At some point, I hope that we find out kind of what really actually happened here behind the scenes. I don't know that we ever will. I think some of us have some hope maybe for that ESPN documentary that was flying around Hannah Hidalgo. But like, there's all that stuff about like how it didn't work out. And then, almost immediately after losing that game to TCU, Olivia Miles announces she's going into the portal and then ends up at TCU, which is even more messy that you're going to the team that you lost to in the Sweet 16. And then you have the added layer of, those hour-long locker room meetings after those 2 late season losses, one after the loss to Florida State at home, and then the other one after the loss to Duke in the ACC tournament. Like I said before on this podcast, you don't have hour-long post-game meetings if there's something wrong with your locker room. So clearly something was not working. And then you had, of course, all the drama with Hannah Hidalgo, going back to last summer, sharing some not so great things on her Instagram that you could interpret as homophobic or interpret as just a young kid making some bad mistakes, whatever way you want to go. It was not a good look. And then not long after Olivia Miles goes into the transfer portal, we get a Players Tribune story from Hannah Hidalgo, which is like painted mostly as at the top and at the bottom, this thing about why she's so competitive and her love of Dragon Ball Z. And then sandwiched just deep into the story is just this line of like, I'm not homophobic, actually. And
why was that thrown in, Mitch? I don't know why they threw that in at all.
I don't know.
I have no idea.
I don't really understand the messaging and the plan around about that Players Tribune piece. I would have put an editor on that one as someone who has taken a lot of editing in his day. That one needed some work, I think, and maybe even a little bit more work than just the Notre Dame comms team, splicing it up a little bit. So yeah. Spicy season.
You do have another nominee for Mess of the Year, which may be my favorite award that we're going to give out at the Wubbies every year. But please tell us your other nominee, although I think I know where this one's trending.
Yeah. Well, while Notre Dame had a messy season, I think that Kayumi McMiller, a.k.a. The Product, also had a very messy season. Again, like, another player who came into her freshman season this year at Rutgers with a whole lot of hype. Jordan Brand All-American, 5-star recruit, Jordan Brand athlete, all this other stuff. Middle of the season gets suspended for, we still don't really know what actually happened. But the game she got suspended for was the game that Rutgers had to play against USC. So a lot of people were looking forward to this because it was like, oh, Kayumi Miller is going to get the chance to go head-to-head with Juju Watkins. I'm like, that'll be a lot of fun. She gets suspended. Then she goes to Instagram and a bunch of other social media places and kind of airs out the dirty laundry there and, tries to defend herself. It doesn't really come off super well. It was just all very, very messy. I think we said on this pod, like, she's not coming back to Rutgers. We can safely say that. And it was just, it just didn't work there. It was just very messy and very not great. Then kind of fast forward to this past week where she's in the transfer portal. I was told that she was asking for, well, I don't want to say she, maybe I should say her camp. Mm-hmm. We're asking for a high dollar figure in terms of NIL, in terms of where she was going to end up. And that scared off some of the sort of like more mainstream kind of heavy hitting teams from going after her. USF was in the mix at one point, Louisville, Florida State, like these teams that you see regularly in the NCAA tournament. On Saturday, I'm told that, I think Talia Goodman also reported this. I sent it out there as well, that, she had committed to and signed with Penn State. And a funny thing about the portal this year that's new that, coaches who have access to it can see, when a player signs to another team, it shows up as that in the portal. So, Kyle Miller signs to Penn State. Okay, cool, great, awesome. But then on Monday, we get this like Instagram live thing where she's at the New York Stock Exchange where she's going to announce her new destination. And it's like you already signed. Like I know that maybe your boxing promoter agent like didn't know this. Her agent or her handler or her camp or whoever you want to call her, by the way, is a guy by the name of Leonard Ellerby, who was basically Floyd Mayweather's like promoter. So he's
literally a boxing promoter. Continue, Mitch.
Yeah. And so they set up this thing at the New York Stock Exchange where she announces and holds up the Penn State shirt and stuff. And it's like, okay, but we already knew this. And we knew this 2 days ago. So just very messy. I don't really know what the strategy there was with Kylie Miller. Obviously, the people in her camp think that she's worth a whole lot of money. I thought the announcement of the transfer thing was a bit muddled. Maybe if you wanted to announce it on your own, you shouldn't have signed 2 days before you were planning to do this Instagram live thing. And then you throw the suspension and the messy exit from Rutgers and all of that in there. And I think she has a good case, but certainly Notre Dame also.
So which one's your pick? Because the product, I mean, look, the product almost stands alone. She may need her own honorary award if we're to go with Notre Dame. I feel like we go with Notre Dame because it truly was the story, in my opinion, of the second half of the college basketball season. With all due respect to UConn, with all due respect to Juju Watkins' unfortunate injury, the demise of Notre Dame, it truly it gutted me. And maybe it's because we both sat here on this podcast and we picked them to win the national title.
Yeah, I think it's Notre Dame just because, the expectations were so high. And as I said before, to have, this combination of Olivia Miles, Maddie Westbelt, Sonia Citron, and Hannah Hidalgo, and to come up empty with nothing to show for it, not an ACC title, not a Final Four appearance, nothing, is a massive disappointment. And so I think, Notre Dame has to rebuild through the portal now. And I don't know. I don't even know what the expectations are for Notre Dame next year because we don't know what their roster is going to look like. So, I think Notre Dame takes it.
It's a Greek tragedy. We have 2 more wubbies to give out here this week on the Women's Basketball Podcast this year. The next award, we told you we'd get back to her, and we have. Proof of Concept, awarded to the coach or program that has showed that good things are coming. For me, my nominee, I present Killa Kim Caldwell of the University of Tennessee. For the first time, the balls go outside of Rocky Top to try to find the next great women's basketball coach. They find Kim Caldwell. They bring her in from the mid-major group of 5 route. And all she does is lead Tennessee to the second weekend of the NCAA tournament. Yes, 8-8 in arguably the hardest league in women's college basketball. The crazy 10-player rotation, it works to perfection. Yes, there were lulls. Yes, there were high moments. There was knocking off the likes of any SEC foe you name who was your highlight of the year. There was losing to Vanderbilt twice, but Michaela Blakes is pretty darn good. So I do think that there's hope there as well. But for me, I think the fact that Kim Caldwell had so much success. And also, we forgot to mention the baby bump. She gave birth during the middle of this wonderful run for Tennessee and this resurgence of one of the blue bloods in women's college basketball. For me, it's the fact that not only did she find success in year one, but as we alluded to earlier in the show, Mitch, the fact that she's finding success in the transfer portal and retaining some of that talent says to me that the system is working and they're adding to the system.
Yeah, I think Kim Caldwell is the winner here, and I'll get to my sort of honorable mention shout out in just a second. But yeah, I mean, the big wins for me was beating UConn at home. You beat the national champs, you beat your rival. That was a huge win for Kim Caldwell. And then you go, into the NCAA tournament and you beat Ohio State on their home floor to get to the Sweet 16. I think
And
both
that
of
was
those
after too,
wins,
by the way. That was after fading down the stretch, and a lot of
right?
people were writing the balls off.
Yep, yeah, did not have a good showing in the SEC tournament. I think that's going to be the key next year for Kim Caldwell in Tennessee is, if you're going to play this way with these sort of, hockey lineups and playing a lot of these players a lot of minutes and stuff like that, it's going to be managing, their fatigue and stuff a little bit better as you get towards the end of February and get into your conference tournament and stuff like that. But once they got into the NCAA tournament, performed pretty well. They beat Ohio State, give Texas a good run in the Sweet 16. So, yeah, I definitely think that Kim Caldwell is the winner here. She got herself a contract extension as well and a raise. So, great for her. The other one I just wanted to mention is Sean Poppy at Clemson. While Clemson did not have a winning record this year, I thought it was notable on a couple different levels, like what he was able to do there this season. I mean, the kind of big one was, they go into the ACC tournament and they beat Stanford, who is like this, pinnacle of the sport, one of the titans in the sport, one of the signature programs, and beat Stanford convincingly, 63-56, to get an ACC tournament win in your first year. That's a big deal. The other part of this is, the increased attendance that he was able to create at Littlejohn Coliseum in Clemson. They averaged just under 3,000 fans per game, which was an increase of 91% from the previous year, which is like just kind of a crazy number. And then I look at sort of like what they're doing going into next season, and I think Clemson is one of the big winners of the portal so far this year. I mentioned earlier I'm trying to kind of rank, some of the players in the portal and stuff. I have 4 Clemson-bound players in my top 60. They include Taylor Johnson Matthews from DePaul, Demara Hines from Wake Forest, Rusney Auguste from Georgia Tech, and Rachel Rose from Wofford. So they're doing some good things, and like he's brought back his really good and top players. He's bringing in some really good talent. I think, like, if you asked me to bet on it today, I would bet on Clemson making the NCAA tournament next year, which would be a big step for them.
And I think it would be a big step, and it's possible because of what the landscape of the ACC may look like, especially if Notre Dame takes a step back, especially if NC State takes a step back to the rest of the pack. LOL, Wolfpack pack. I think it's a primed opportunity for Clemson to take that step forward. By the way, Georgia Tech will have a new head coach for the first time in eons. Another opportunity there for the Tigers to really take a step forward in the
For
ACC
sure.
standings in 2025. I don't want to end on a sad wubby, but I guess this one's kind of sad. Maybe we'll do a bus driver of the year. We'll impromptu do one of those because I'd like to end on a positive note. But yes, the next award, we are worried about you award. This is for the coach who is on the hottest seat. I like your nominee, Mitch. I'll get to mine real quickly, though, because we did already talk about the product. Coquise Washington at Rutgers. It's not even so much about Washington as it is about that program. No one will ever live up to C. Vivian Stringer and what she was able to do. But I look at Tennessee and the fact that they now have Kim Caldwell, and it appears they have finally found stability long term at the head coaching ranks of their women's basketball program at long last since the passing of Pat Summitt. And for me, as someone who grew up rooting for that Rutgers program, who was in middle school in my very formative years when they went to the national title game, and I just can't help but say, do you need to make a change? Do you need to go make a splash just because I want Rutgers basketball to matter again? And for all the reasons we outlined, the Big Ten next year, if Juju Watkins isn't playing for USC because of she's recovering from her injury, if UCLA is, yes, competitive, but maybe takes a step back, sure, you got Maryland. but I do want Rutgers to be in the conversation. And in an alternative world, I think they could, even with the likes of Michigan, Michigan State continuing to take steps forward.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think women's basketball is better when Rutgers is good. There are a ton of talented players that come out of New Jersey every single year. Olivia
Every year.
Olivia Miles and Hannah Hidalgo among them. And yeah, I think that Rutgers being good again would be a good thing. It's a bummer to see them in the kind of shape that they're in right now. So yeah, I think certainly they've got to figure some things out next season.
I'll offer this analogy too. And like, don't take this the wrong way if you're listening to this from New Jersey, because I argued with my family for months about it. When Greg Schiano came back to Rutgers for the second go round, my grandpa called me and said, I cannot believe that we have to pay the coach of Rutgers $4 million as taxpayers in the state of New Jersey. And I said, well, Poppy, if you want to win a Big Ten title, or if you want to compete at the FBS level, you need to go get the guy who's done it before. Because would you like to have the same 10 years of mediocrity back where you don't matter? And he was like, well, no, that's the price of the dollar. That's the going rate. And I'm not suggesting that whoever, if Rutgers was to make a change, that they need to go out and pay that person hand over foot. But the point is I want to get back to that point where you are in the conversation for having some of the best coached teams in the country and in the national landscape.
Yeah, and I don't think it's a coincidence that like while Rutgers has had sort of like this downswing in these down years, what let's say over the past 10 years really, while that's happened, a lot of other programs around Rutgers have done really well. I mean, you look at the entire Ivy League, which is in that ballpark up there, doing really well. You see Notre Dame coming in and picking up every great player from the New Jersey, New York area.
Well, and that's why I brought up Schiano, because look at how
Yeah.
many New Jersey born players have gone to Ohio State or Michigan in the last 10 years to great success,
Yep.
let
Yeah.
alone Penn State, who's always plucking from the Garden State.
Yes, yeah, Rutgers has some things to figure out for sure. The pick that I have is Joni Taylor at Texas A&M. Joni Taylor, I like her a whole lot, but you're at a place where they expect to win and nothing really short of that, and she hasn't done a whole lot of winning there. She's had a really great run at Georgia, which got her this job where she never had a losing season at Georgia, went to 4 NCAA tournaments, had 4+21 seasons. She at Texas A&M over the past 3 years, she went 9-20 her first year, 10-19 this past season. In between that, went 19-13 and snuck into the NCAA tournament for her lone appearance there so far. She's 38-52 as the Texas A&M head coach, and that's not going to last that long in College Station. Texas A&M has money; they will pay you to go away. And they will pay for another coach to come in there. They're also a program that, Gary Blair coached this program for a long, long time and won a whole lot of games, and won a national championship. Like, this is a program that has a tradition and history of women's college basketball. So maybe, they get Jana from St. Peter's. Maybe there's a couple transfers on the way. Maybe Joni Taylor can figure this thing out. But I think certainly next season, it is a make or break year. They have to make the NCAA tournament if she wants to extend this thing any further.
Knowing the Jimbo Fisher of it all out in College Station, it is a bit surprising. I don't know, Joni. What I'll just tell you is from some mutual friends and friends who, work in the A&M area. People admire her in terms of the culture she's built, the leadership
Mm-hmm.
that she has certainly exhibited and has welcomed the entire campus into that fraternity, sorority, if you may. But ultimately, that goodwill is only going to last you so long. And especially in a place, as we both pine for yesteryear and those programs that when they are good, it just makes the sport that much better. A&M falls into that category as well. But I agree with Joni Taylor, especially knowing just the absolute boiler situation that playing in the SEC, it's never an easy night out, but you also need to have some sort of proof of concept at this point in your tenure there.
Yeah, we have to see something from her next year. But yeah, I like her a whole lot. Really good coach. Really well liked in coaching circles. If it doesn't work out at Texas A&M, I think she can get another job very quickly. Yeah, we got to see something from her. Joni Taylor, by the way, a product of the University of Alabama, like our friend Dimitri.
Let that be known. Let that be put on the record. So, see, we did kind of end with a little positive. I'll
Yeah.
just throw an honorary one out there because we love bus drivers here at OG Triangle Media. I don't want to give Paige Beckers the Bus Driver of the Year award because, as we discussed at different moments throughout the course of the season on this podcast, was Sarah Strong actually the bus driver? Was AZ Fudd actually the bus driver of this UConn squad? So, Mitch, lead us off. Who is your bus driver of the year? Because, quite frankly, since I didn't nominate her for Portal Player of the Year, I'm going to put Haley Van Lith out there, and I'm going to say that she's my nominee for Bus Driver of the Year.
Yeah. On the spot here, I'm gonna pick Alyssa Utsby from North Carolina.
Go on.
We talked earlier in the season about who the bus driver for the Tar Heels is. And it ended up being Alyssa Utsby, who was the heart and soul of this Tar Heels team for a long, long time, for 5 years. She leaves UNC as their all-time leading rebounder, I think also top 10 in assists. It was really fun. Their last home game, second round of the NCAA tournament, they beat West Virginia. Utsby has a great game. She jumps up on the scorer's table. It was really a cool moment. And she was the last player to leave the floor in Carmichael. It was a bummer that they forgot how to play offense when they got to Birmingham in the Sweet 16 against Duke. One of the worst games I've ever seen in my entire life.
Set the sport back centuries, but who's counting?
It was awesome to see let Utsby have that moment in Carmichael, and it was fun to cover her for the past 5 years. And she's going to get a chance to make a WNBA roster as she signed with the Sparks after going undrafted.
The real bus driver of the year, and I know I don't want to be cliche, and I honestly think we should give it to Alyssa Utsby because I feel like she does need more appreciation for what she was able to do with the Tar Heels. Juju Watkins is the bus driver of the year. In addition to being the national player of the year, you saw what USC looked like without her. And all due respect to Kiki Area-Fenn and what she was able to do in her absence. But ultimately, I mean, there was no team that without one player looked like a completely different outfit, quite like Lindsey Gottlieb's Trojans. And so I think as you're nodding, I think we agree. We'll end with that, with this year's Wubbies. The bus driver of the year, Juju Watkins. Juju, we hope you are feeling better. It is time as we put a bow on the Wubbies and this week's episode for last call, Mitch. And it wouldn't be last call without our last check-in on where in the world is MiLasyaFulwiley.
Well, we thought that there was some reports and stuff yesterday that she was going to visit LSU. And then apparently she made some comments on Instagram that is not true. And so I don't know where in the world MiLasyaFulwiley is at the moment. The verdict is still out on where she is going to be spending her next year of college basketball. I did just see on my Twitter timeline as I'm searching for anything new about MiLasyaFulwiley that last tier Poa is hanging out with Molly Miller at Arizona State. So shout out to her. But yeah, I don't know where MiLasyaFulwiley is going to go. Maybe we'll know in about a week when we tape our next episode. But I'm holding hope out for the Under Armour connection and MiLasyaFulwiley being a University of Maryland Terrapin. But we'll see. We'll see.
Then you got to get your futures now while you can.
That's right.
I mean, that would truly what would the market do? Like the market would lose its mind, I would think.
Yeah. And
minus money for Maryland to make the Final Four.
The other Under Armour connection, Notre Dame.
Yeah.
And El Doggo, MiLasyaFulwiley. Could be a lot of fun. Could also be very messy. TBD.
We thought they could have two bus drivers, and then the bus crashed. That's all I'm going to say about Notre Dame. As someone who loves Neil Ivey, too, by the way. Real quick, a couple more from me, Mitch. We already got to the product, so let me just ask you this. What did you make of ESPN PR and some of their graphics talking about how many people watched the WNBA draft compared to 2023, conveniently left 2024 out? Listen, great marketing by ESPN, but a lot of people caught it and were like, well, what about last year, though? So that,
I mean, I'm fine with it. Like, I think we have to sort of come to understand that, like, the Caitlin Clark comment was that. Like, I don't think we're ever going to really be able to recapture what we saw across women's basketball, the college game, because they did this with the national championship ratings too, where they were up from some past ones, but nowhere close to 2024. But I think like that is going to be what it's going to be for probably the rest of time, right? I think the most watched men's basketball national championship was the 1979 one between Magic Johnson and Larry Bird. And like, we don't really compare stuff to 1979 anymore because like we're not going to touch it. So I think over time we will come to understand that 2024 was a really special year in terms of the WNBA draft, in terms of some college, ratings for the national championship and stuff like that. And we're probably never going to get back there until the next Caitlin Clark comes along. Is there even another Caitlin Clark? Probably not. We never got another Magic Johnson or Larry Bird. So I'm fine with it. I think that, especially like as you're talking about like the growth of audience and viewership numbers, I think to put it in the context where you're comparing it to the pre-Clark, I think is important. Like if you're trying to show, hey, like this ball is still rolling in the right direction and like things are still on an upswing. They weren't as high as last year, but like we're still climbing here. I think it's important to kind of have that context instead of just being like, oh, well, it wasn't good as last year, so it's an L. Like, nah, it's still pretty good.
Well said, Mitch. Almost as well said as a nominee for Tweet of the Year. Let's file this one away, producer Dimitri, for next year's Wubbies. This is from Jeff Walls, the head coach of Louisville. Assistant coaching position. This is a tweet, folks. This is actually a job posting tweet. Assistant coaching position. It's impossible for one person to replace Steph Norman. With that said, looking for a qualified coach with at least one daughter, sister, relative, or friend who is a top 30 women's basketball player who can come with you. Apply below with the link. Iconic. Put it in the Louvre. Thank you, Jeff Walls. I needed that laugh.
Yeah, that lines up with Jeff's personality pretty well there. I don't think he's going to be able to find someone who fits that specific criteria. However, as I click on this link, there is not a job posting there anymore. So perhaps the Jeff Walls has made a hire.
Maybe he found someone with a sister, friend, relative in the portal who was a top 30 recruit. That's awesome.
TBD. Yeah, we'll see.
Love that for him. Love that for the birds. That's awesome. That's awesome. Mitch, any last shout outs, closeouts from you?
I don't think I have any big ones. I did get to do some NASCAR coverage over the weekend where I went to Rockingham over at SB Nation's Breakaway. I wrote about Tony Breidinger, who's the only woman racing full-time in NASCAR this season in the Craftsman Truck Series. And she had her best finish of the season, 18th, top 20. So shout out to her.
That's awesome. And shout out to you, Mitch. A round of applause for the new dad. We're very excited to have a new junior producer here on the Women's Basketball Podcast coming this fall.
Yes, coming this fall, a new addition to the podcast lineup.
And well before the basketball season really kicks into high gear, which I'm sure mom and dad are very, very happy about.
Yes. Yeah. We'll, hopefully, by the time the season rolls around, maybe we figure some things out, got our rotations in order, figured out our depth a little bit, and
you may need Kim Caldwell to come in and help set up some hockey shift rotations, bring in some additional players through the portal to really supplement the roster.
Yeah, we're going to need some help, maybe some in-laws, coming in via the transfer portal. But yeah, we'll try to figure it out by the time the season gets here.
We are very excited for the Northam family. We are very excited for the WNBA preseason, which kicks off next weekend. Thank goodness. Wow. We are ready for it. Maybe we'll even have a couple of interviews between now and then. We'll keep you posted on OG Triangle Media right here on the Women's Basketball Podcast. He's Mitch. I'm Mia saying we will catch you next week.
Deuces.